By the time you see it, it's already too late. Because it runs 20% faster than an Olympic champion, it weighs as much as a 360-kilogram concert grand piano, yet it's as explosive as a bullet. Deep in Montana, the trees don't just bend in the wind. Their 30-centimeter thick trunks snap with a single crack. This is Wild Door, and today you'll meet the Grizzly, the sole ruler of these mountains since the days when our ancestors hadn't even invented the word fear.
Think of the northern Rocky Mountains, the Bob Marshall Wilderness, Glacier National Park, stretching along the Montana-Alberta border, peaks that slice through the sky at over 3,000 meters, rivers so cold they'll stop your heart in 4 minutes, forests so dense they swallow the midday light. This is one of the last places where an ecosystem still operates by its original rules. There are no shortcuts, no safety net. The food chain isn't an abstract concept here, it's a concrete reality. Etched into the claw marks on tree bark, the overturned boulders, and the footprints pressed deep into the mud along the riverbank. And at the center of it all, a single animal, the grizzly bear, Ursus arctos horribilis, a name that sounds like a warning even in Latin. You smell it before you see it, a dense, musky scent, reminiscent of wet fur, mingled with pine resin, lingering in the air. You hear the sound of brush being crushed under immense weight, and you feel it, a low vibration rising from the ground, deliberate, the approach of something in no hurry. An adult male grizzly bear in Montana can weigh over 360 kilograms. When it stands on its hind legs, its height exceeds 2.4 meters. That's taller than most door frames. It weighs as much as a concert grand piano, and it's fast, much faster than you. At full speed, a grizzly bear can reach 55 kilometers per hour. An Olympic-level runner runs at 45. There is not a single scenario where you could outrun this animal in open terrain. None. But sheer body size isn't even the most fascinating thing about this animal. Look at its front paws. Just the claws reach 10 centimeters. Not razor sharp like a cat's, but dense, curved, and shaped for digging and lifting. A single claw strike can shatter bone. In 2011, a researcher in Yellowstone documented a grizzly bear flipping a 300-kilogram boulder with one paw to reach a ground squirrel beneath it. The force required to do this, a seemingly careless, offhand movement, is virtually impossible to quantify. The real weapon is in the nose. A grizzly bear's sense of smell is 2,100 times stronger than a human's, 7 times better than a hound's. It can detect a carcass 29 kilometers away. It can sense insulin in your sweat. Right now, if it were nearby, it would already know your stress level when you last ate, and whether you're carrying food. Approximately 800 grizzly bears live in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, a number that once dwindled to nearly zero. In 1975, the species was listed under the Endangered Species Act. After decades of managed recovery, Montana is now home to the largest grizzly bear population in the continental United States. This is not a story of untouched wilderness. It is a story of collapse and partial rebirth. The contradiction that no one talks about is this: the grizzly bear is classified as a predator. Yet in most years, 80 to 90% of its diet consists of plant matter, fruits, roots, grasses, pine nuts. It can walk 30 kilometers a day, not hunting, but grazing. North America's most powerful land predator spends much of its time eating like a giant sheep. Until it doesn't. Late October, Flathead Valley, temperatures dropping below freezing at night. For 6 weeks before hibernation, the bear has been eating 20 hours a day. During this phase, known as hyperphagia, the body demands 20,000 to 30,000 calories a day. The bear isn't hungry in the way you understand it. It's driven by a biological necessity, a necessity that overrides all other signals. 80 meters away, a male deer grazing by the riverbank, 320 kilograms in his prime, standing in water up to his knees with his back turned. The bear isn't attacking, it's moving, slowly, deliberately, crouching among the thickets, placing each step with a precision that seems out of place in this setting. The deer doesn't hear it, doesn't smell it. The wind is perfect. Then the distance closes to 15 meters and the bear bursts forward. An explosive sprint. 4 to 5 seconds of pure acceleration. The deer tries to flee, but the slope is steep, the water is deep, and the bear's momentum drags it into the deer's side. The kill is swift, a single bite. Cervical dislocation. The neck snaps under the pressure of the jaw. The deer dies without ceasing to move. What happens next is the part documentary skip. The bear drags the carcass, the full 320 kilograms, up a 30-degree slope and buries it. Soil, branches, and its own scent layered on top. A food cache. It will sleep nearby, waking every few hours to eat, then sleep again. This behavior is called caching, and it shows that grizzly bears don't just kill, they manage resources. But this is where it gets really strange. It has been documented that grizzly bears in Montana's river systems have acquired salmon hunting methods they didn't inherit from their ancestors, learned through contact with individuals from coastal populations. A bear in the North Fork of the Flathead River was observed catching 29 fish in a single day using a technique identical to that of Alaskan coastal grizzlies. This behavior was not inherited, it was learned, and it was passed on to other bears in the same watershed. And that's not even the most troubling part right now. Before we go any further, I need to ask you something. You've read this far. That alone tells me something about you. Most people just scroll past this kind of content. They want short clips, fast loops, things that don't require them to really think, but the ones who stay, the ones still here right now, are different. They want to understand how this world really works, the unfiltered version, the real thing. If that's you, and I think it is, clicking the subscribe button will be one of the easiest decisions you make today. Because every week we dive deeper into the wild places other channels don't venture into. Not just the dramatic moments, the biology, the behavioral patterns, the things researchers have discovered through decades of work. Subscribe, hit the bell, and become part of the small group that truly understands the natural world, not just watches it. Already subscribed? Leave a comment below. Tell us which animal you want next. The one with the most requests. That's the one we'll feature next week, late October, Flathead Valley. Temperatures dropping below freezing at night. For 6 weeks before hibernation, the bear has been eating 20 hours a day. During this phase, known as hyperphagia, the body demands 20,000 to 30,000 calories a day. The bear isn't hungry in the way you understand it. It's driven by a biological necessity, a necessity that overrides all other signals. 80 meters away, a male deer grazing by the riverbank, 320 kilograms in his prime, standing in way Between 2000 and 2023, there were a total of 180 documented grizzly bear attacks in the greater Yellowstone and Northern Continental Range ecosystems. 11 of these resulted in fatalities. This number is both smaller and larger than people might expect. Small compared to millions of years of human-wildlife interaction, but large because each one points to a specific and preventable failure point. The vast majority of attacks occur within 50 meters. Most are defensive in nature: a bear taken by surprise, a bear with cubs, a bear on the trail. A predatory attack in which a bear actively hunts a human is rare, but has been documented. And it follows a different pattern. No feigned attack, no warning call, no hesitation, just an approach. In 2016, a young man named Lance Crosby lost his life while hiking alone in Glacier National Park. He was an experienced backcountry hiker. He worked as a park ranger. He knew the area well. The bear that killed him was a female with 2 cubs. She had lived in the park for years, had never shown aggression toward humans, and was considered accustomed to people according to all records. The bear was later euthanized. Her 2 cubs were sent to a zoo. A careful, knowledgeable person died. An animal that was simply doing what it does died. There is no clean outcome here. This leads to the question no one asks. When we talk about grizzly bear management, who is that area really being managed for? The grizzly bear was here first. The Continental Divide has been its corridor for 10,000 years. Every farm, every trail network, every summer home built on the forest edge all represent a decision to place human infrastructure right into the heart of the bear's living habitat. The conflict is real. Animal losses are real. The danger to hikers is real, but this is also real. We moved into their home. We call the grizzly bear a threat to our progress, a complication, something that must be managed, controlled, displaced, or in some years shot. But the grizzly bear does not experience this landscape as a threat. It experiences it as home. A home that is constantly shrinking, a home where salmon runs are shortening, fruit seasons are shifting with the climate, and nesting corridors that intersect with roads. The grizzly bear is not aggressive. It has adapted. Every behavior that frightens us, a lunge, a swipe of the paw, a defensive stance, is part of a system that functioned seamlessly for 4 million years before we showed up with our backpacks, our pets, our summer homes, and our fear. The people drawn to this kind of content, those who want to understand the grizzly bear rather than fear it, are the ones who directly shape how we relate to the wild world, not with emotion, with real knowledge. If you know someone planning to visit Glacier National Park or the Bob Marshall Wilderness, they need to hear this. Not to be afraid, to be prepared, and to understand what it truly means to share the same landscape with something so extraordinary. The grizzly bear has survived ice ages, mass extinctions, and a century in which it was nearly wiped out by humans. It's still here. It's still hunting. It still sinks its massive weight into the riverbank mud and reads the world with a nose that knows its territory better than any map could. This is not a threat. It is 4 million years of evidence, and this was only a part of the story. What we haven't addressed yet, social hierarchy, the 3-year mother-cub bond, how the brown bear navigates using the magnetic field, is an entirely different matter.